The deed has already been transferred to Robert. You don't live here anymore." Jessica spoke those words standing in the doorway of the room with a cold detachment, while the nurse was still adjusting the IV drip in my arm. I had just woken up from a 3-week coma. I barely had the strength to sit up in the hospital bed, and she was already there, standing with her arms crossed, dismissing me as if I were a piece of old, unwanted furniture. The nurse immediately stopped what she was doing. She looked at me, then looked at Jessica. She didn't say a word, but the expression on her face said everything. The orderly who had come to collect me with the wheelchair stood frozen in the doorway, awkward, not knowing where to look. The afternoon sun streamed through the window and hit my face directly. Everything looked too bright, brutally real. Jessica pulled out her cell phone and started scrolling through the screen with indifference, as if she had just solved an annoying administrative problem. She didn't even dignify me with a second glance. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stayed there, staring at her, trying to process how we had reached this point, this abyss. I thought about the sewing machine I had sold with a heavy heart to make the down payment on that house. I thought about all the bills and expenses I had paid alone for 20 interminable years. You know that feeling when you watch your entire life crumble in a single sentence? It was exactly that. I had worked 12 hours a day to raise Robert alone after his father died. I paid for school, food, clothes, everything. The house was mine. The deed was in my name. There was my sweat in every single brick of those walls. But while I was in a coma, defenseless, unable to sign anything, unable to say a word, they had taken everything from me. What they didn't know, however, was that I still kept a copy of the original deed, and that, in less than a week, I would be back, with the police, with a ruthless attorney, and with the truth in my hand. If you have ever been humiliated by the person you love the most, stay until the end, because this story does not end with my defeat. My name is Martha. I am 67 years old. I have worked my entire life as a seamstress. I started at 14, helping out in the home of a lady who made custom wedding dresses. I learned everything there. Later, I set up my own little corner in the living room of my house with a used machine I bought on an installment plan. I married Anthony when I was 22. He was a city bus driver. We didn't have much, but it was enough to live with dignity. Robert was born 2 years later. I stopped sewing for a few months to take care of him, but soon I was back to work. We needed the money desperately. When Robert was 8 years old, Anthony had a massive heart attack behind the wheel. It happened so fast. There wasn't even time to get to the hospital. I was left completely alone, with a small child and a mountain of bills to pay. That was when I understood what it meant to really work. I would wake up at 5 in the morning, make coffee, get Robert ready for school, and sit at my machine. I sewed non-stop until noon. I stopped only to make lunch. Then I went back to the machine. Sometimes I stayed up until midnight, finishing an urgent order. I sewed everything. Prom dresses, suit pants, curtain hems, zipper repairs. Whatever came my way, I did it. There was one year I sewed 300 school uniforms all by myself. My back hurt so bad that at night I couldn't even find a comfortable position to sleep. But I needed that money. Robert never went without. He had new school supplies every year. He had good sneakers, clean clothes, a hot meal on the table. When he wanted to take a computer course, I sold my old machine and bought a simpler one, just to pay for his tuition. He doesn't even know that. When he turned 18, I scraped together all my savings to make a down payment on a house. It wasn't a mansion. 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, a small backyard, but it was ours. I paid the mortgage religiously for 15 years. Every month, without being late a single day. The deed was finally issued in my name. I kept it in a blue folder, along with all the payment receipts. Robert grew up, found a job, started helping with the household expenses. We got along well. He was an attentive son. When I got sick, he would cook. He would bring me my medicine. I thought I had done everything right as a mother, until he met Jessica. At first, I thought she was polite, pretty, always well-dressed. She spoke well. They dated for a year before getting married. I even helped organize the wedding. I embroidered the tablecloths. I sewed the bridesmaids' dresses. I wanted with all my heart for it to work. After the wedding, they lived for a few months in a rented apartment. but the rent was too expensive. Robert asked me if they could come live with me for a while, just until they saved some money. I said yes. After all, the house had space, and he was my son. That was when everything started to change. In the beginning, it was small things, almost imperceptible. Jessica reorganized the kitchen without asking me. She threw away some containers I had used for a long time. She said they were old and ugly. I didn't say anything. I thought it was just her way of tidying up. Then, she started inviting her friends over without giving me a heads up. I would come home from the grocery store carrying heavy bags and find people in the living room, drinking, laughing loudly, as if the house belonged to her. I would say hello politely and go to my room. But I felt that discomfort. You know? That terrible sensation of being unwanted in your own space. One day, I was sewing in the living room. It was a cocktail dress, an important job. Jessica arrived and told me I needed to sew in my bedroom because she was having guests over. I looked at her, not understanding. She repeated it with that tone of someone forcing themselves to be patient with a child. "Martha, please, it's just for today." I gathered my things in silence and went to my room. I stayed there, locked in, listening to the laughter in the living room. And for the first time, I felt fear. Not fear of her. Fear that my son was no longer the same person I had raised. Months went by, and the situation only got worse. Jessica stopped pretending. She treated the house as her exclusive property, and she treated me as if I were the maid. One day, I was in the kitchen making lunch. She walked in, looked into the pot, and said, "Martha, next time put less salt. Robert doesn't like it like this." I had been cooking for him for 40 years. I knew exactly what he liked, but I didn't say anything. I just nodded. After that, it became routine. She would come home from work and leave her dirty laundry in the basket, expecting me to wash it. She left dirty dishes in the sink. She would call me from her bedroom to bring her a glass of water, as if I were there to serve her. One Saturday morning, I was mopping the living room floor. Jessica came down in her bathrobe, looked at the wet floor, and said loudly, so Robert could hear, "Your mother could mop the floor earlier, right? We can't even walk in here." I felt the blood rush to my head. I looked at Robert, hoping he would say something, that he would defend me. He was absorbed in his phone. He didn't even lift his head. That was the moment I understood. He wasn't going to defend me. He had chosen his side. The worst part wasn't the extra work. It was the invisibility. They talked in the living room as if I weren't there, as if I were a piece of furniture. They made plans, made decisions about the house, and I would find out by accident. One day, I discovered they had changed the lock on the front gate. No one had warned me. No one had given me the new key. I asked Robert for the key. He told me he would make a copy and give it to me. A week went by, 2 weeks, 3. I had to ring the doorbell to enter my own home. There was a Sunday when Jessica's family came for lunch. She prepared everything, set the table with the nice tablecloth. I helped cook all the food. When everyone sat down to eat, there was no place for me at the table. Jessica looked at me and said, "Oh, Martha, you can eat in the kitchen, right? The table is full." I stood frozen, holding my plate. Her parents were there, her siblings. Everyone heard, and no one said a thing. I went to the kitchen. I sat alone. I ate staring at the wall, and for the first time, I cried. But I cried quietly, so no one would hear. After that day, things got even worse. Jessica started wanting to control the money. She said she was going to organize the household finances. She asked me to hand over my share of my Social Security check for her to manage. She said there would be more left over at the end of the month. I didn't want to, but Robert insisted. "Mom, Jessica understands these things. Let her handle it." I ended up accepting. I started depositing half my pension into her account every month, except I never saw where that money went. I would ask for something necessary from the store, and she would say there was no money. But she would arrive with bags from expensive stores, new clothes, designer perfumes. I didn't say anything, but I saw everything. It was around that time they had Bella, my granddaughter. I was so happy. I thought things would get better. I believed I would be able to be close, to help, to care for her. But Jessica barely let me hold the baby. When I did hold her, she would stand right next to me, watching me like a hawk. "Watch her head, Martha. Don't rock her too much. I think I better take her back." One day, I bought a little outfit for Bella. Small, pink, with a teddy bear embroidered on it. I did the embroidery myself, by hand. I left it in their room, on the dresser. The next day, the outfit had disappeared. I asked Jessica. She told me she had donated it. It wasn't Bella's style. I felt a pain in my chest that wouldn't go away. It wasn't about the clothes. It was about the absolute contempt. That's when I started paying more attention. I started observing the two of them, the hushed conversations they had in the bedroom, the papers Jessica guarded jealously in a folder, the way they looked at me, as if I were a problem to be solved. I took my original deed to the house, which was stored in the closet, and hid it inside an old book I knew no one touched. I made copies of the payment receipts. I kept the receipts of the transfers I made to Jessica. I started writing down dates, amounts, everything. I didn't know yet what they were planning, but I knew something was wrong, and I was going to be prepared. 3 months later, Jessica came home with a document in her hand. She sat at the kitchen table and called me. Robert was standing next to her. "Martha, we need you to sign this." I looked at the paper. It was a power of attorney. I skimmed through it. It authorized Robert to make bank transactions, handle document issues, sign in my name. "What is this for?" I asked, suspicious. Jessica sighed, as if I had asked a stupid question. "It's to make things easier, Martha. You're getting older. If something happens, we need to be able to resolve things for you." "What things?" "The bank, the electric bill, those things. It's normal. Everyone does it." I looked at Robert. He avoided my gaze. He kept fidgeting with a glass of water on the table. "I don't want to sign this right now. Let me think about it." Jessica stood up from the chair, visibly irritated. "Think about what, Martha? We are trying to help you. But if you don't want it, that's your problem." She stormed out of the kitchen. Robert stayed. He put his hand on my shoulder. "Mom, it's just for security. It doesn't cost anything." "If it doesn't cost anything, why the rush?" He pulled his hand away. He stood up without answering. He took the paper with him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there thinking, a power of attorney for what? I paid my bills. I solved my problems. Why did they need that? The next day, I went to the county clerk's office. I spoke to the clerk at the counter. I asked what a person could do with a broad power of attorney like that. She explained it all. With that paper, Robert could sell real estate, transfer property, close bank accounts. Everything. I felt a cold chill in my stomach. I went back home and went straight to the closet where I kept my important documents. I opened the drawer. The blue folder with the house deed wasn't there. I tore everything apart. Top drawer, bottom drawer, nothing. My heart raced. I left the room, went to the living room. Jessica was on the couch, watching TV calmly. "Did you see my blue folder?" She didn't even look at me. "What folder?" "The folder with my documents. It was in the closet." "Haven't seen it." "Jessica, where's my folder?" She turned off the TV and stared at me. "Martha, I don't know about any folder. Stop accusing me of things you lose yourself." I was going to answer, but dizziness hit me out of nowhere. I grabbed the wall. Everything went blurry. I heard Robert's voice in the distance. "Mom! Mom! What's wrong?" I collapsed. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. The doctor said I had suffered a stroke. He said I needed to stay admitted, run tests, be under observation. I spent 3 days in the ICU. Then they transferred me to a regular room. Robert showed up every day, but stayed for very little time. Jessica showed up once, left a bag with clothes, and left without saying much. I still couldn't speak properly, but I could think. And I thought about that folder. I thought about that power of attorney. I thought about everything. A week later, my condition worsened. A generalized infection. I fell into an induced coma. I heard the doctor explaining the situation to Robert. He said he didn't know how long I would stay like that. It could be days. It could be weeks. Before fading out completely, I remembered one thing. The copy of the deed. I had hidden it inside my mother's recipe book, that old stained book that sat on the kitchen shelf. No one touched that book. No one knew there was anything in there. I prayed it would still be there when I woke up. And then everything went dark. 3 weeks. I stayed in a coma for 3 weeks. And when I woke up, the first thing I heard was Jessica's voice saying the house wasn't mine anymore. 2 days later, I was discharged. I was still weak. My left leg wouldn't respond well. I needed a cane to walk, but I needed to go home. I needed to see with my own eyes what had happened. Robert came to pick me up at the hospital. He said almost nothing on the way. He just drove, staring straight ahead. I tried to ask about the house, about the papers, but he deflected. "We'll talk later, Mom. You need to rest." When we pulled into my street, I saw people on the sidewalk. Mrs. Higgins, my neighbor of 30 years, Mr. Jacobs, the owner of the corner store, Sarah, who lived 2 houses down. They were all there, standing, watching. I got out of the car slowly. Robert held my arm. We walked to the gate. Jessica was at the door, arms crossed. She had changed the lock. I saw it immediately. It was a digital lock, one with a keypad. "Jessica, open up, please," I said. She didn't move. "Martha, we need to talk." "Then open the door. We'll talk inside." "No." She spoke sharply, loudly, so everyone could hear. "You don't live here anymore." Mrs. Higgins took a step forward, indignant. "What kind of nonsense is this, girl? The house belongs to Martha." Jessica turned to her with a forced, cynical smile. "The house belonged to Martha. Now the title is in Robert's name. It's all legal, new deed, everything in order. She is confused because of the stroke, poor thing. But she has nothing of hers here anymore." I felt my legs wobble. "Robert, say something." He was by my side, silent, looking at the ground. "Robert," I said louder. He lifted his head but couldn't look me in the eye. "Mom, Jessica is right. The house is in my name now. You signed the power of attorney before you were hospitalized. It was all legal." "I didn't sign any power of attorney." "Yes, you did. You don't remember because of the stroke." His voice was low, powerless, as if he had memorized a script. Jessica took a step forward and got very close to me. "Martha, you have nothing left here. Your clothes are in that bag over there." She pointed to a supermarket bag lying on the ground in front of the gate. "Take it and leave, or I'm calling the police for trespassing." Silence. The entire street fell into a sepulchral silence. Even the dogs stopped barking. Mr. Jacobs took a step forward. "This isn't right. Martha has lived here her whole life. How is it possible that—" "You have nothing to do with this," Jessica cut him off. "This is a family matter." I looked at that house. The house I paid for alone for 15 years. The house where I raised my son. The house that had my sweat in every brick. I looked at Robert. He kept his head down. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Not there. Not in front of everyone. I gripped my cane tightly. I bent down slowly and picked up the bag from the ground. I weighed it in my hand. It was too light. My entire life didn't fit in there. I looked at Jessica one last time. "Fine, I'm going." I turned my back and started walking. Mrs. Higgins came to my side immediately. "Martha, come to my place. You're not staying on the street." I nodded, but I couldn't speak. I walked slowly, dragging my bad leg, holding that miserable bag. And behind me, I heard Jessica's voice, loud, clear, for everyone to hear. Finally, I couldn't stand that old woman in my house anymore. I stayed at Mrs. Higgins' house. She gave me the guest room, small but clean. It had a bed, an old closet, and a window that looked out onto the backyard. She didn't charge me anything. She said to stay as long as I needed. The first 2 days, I barely left the room. I lay there, staring at the ceiling. My legs still hurt, but my soul hurt more. I couldn't stop thinking about that sentence. Finally, I couldn't stand that old woman in my house anymore. My house, not hers, mine. Mrs. Higgins would knock on the door, bring food, tea, ask if I needed anything. I thanked her, but barely touched the plate. I wasn't hungry. I didn't feel like doing anything. On the 3rd day, she sat on the edge of the bed. "Martha, how long are you going to stay there? Get up. Take a shower. You are not a quitter." I looked at her with sadness. "Mrs. Higgins, they stole everything from me. I have nothing left. You have your dignity, and you are right. This can't stand." She was right. I couldn't stay there, lying down, waiting to die. I needed to fight back. That afternoon, I got up. I took a shower. I put on the clothes I had brought in the bag. I sat at Mrs. Higgins's kitchen table and started to think. The first thing I did was open that plastic bag. They had put 3 changes of old clothes in there, a toothbrush, a broken comb. Nothing else. No documents, no photos, nothing that was truly valuable to me. But they had forgotten one thing. They didn't know about the copy of the deed I had hidden. I needed to go back there and retrieve that book, but I couldn't go through the front door. Jessica had changed the lock, and if I showed up, she would follow through on her threat to call the police. That's when I remembered Sarah, the neighbor 2 houses down. Her daughter, Jenny, worked as a housekeeper, and one of the houses she cleaned was mine. I mean, the house that was mine. I went to Sarah's house. I rang the doorbell. She opened it and hugged me tight. "Martha, it's absurd what they did to you. The whole neighborhood is talking about it." I explained what I needed. Jenny was going to clean the house the next day. I needed her to get a book for me, an old recipe book that was on the kitchen shelf. Inside it was a piece of paper. It was all I needed. Sarah said yes immediately. "Consider it done. Jenny will get it for you." The next day, at 3 in the afternoon, Jenny knocked on Mrs. Higgins' door. She had the book in her hand. I opened it trembling, and there it was, the copy of the deed, intact. I held that paper and felt a vital force return to my body. That night, I sat at the table and started crunching numbers. I took a notebook and wrote everything down. How much I had deposited into Jessica's account over 2 years. How much I had paid for electricity, water, gas. How much I had spent on house renovations, painting, roof repairs, everything. Mrs. Higgins helped me remember the dates. She had witnessed many things. She saw when I paid the contractor to fix the fence. She saw when I bought the construction materials. She had even kept the contractor's phone number. I made a list of witnesses: Mrs. Higgins, Mr. Jacobs, Sarah, the contractor, the lady at the check cashing place where I always cashed my pension check, people who knew that house was mine. I gathered the deposit slips I had saved. I gathered the payment receipts for the house I had in copies. I put everything in a binder. I organized it by date. The next morning, I got ready. I put on the most presentable outfit I had. I pulled my hair back. I grabbed my cane, grabbed the binder, and said to Mrs. Higgins, "I'm going to find a lawyer." She smiled. "Go on. And destroy those 2. I walked out of that house with my back straighter than I had managed since the stroke. The pain in my leg was still there, but the pain in my chest had turned into something else. It had turned into rage. And rage, when you know how to use it, turns into justice. They thought I would give up. They thought I would disappear, ashamed, humiliated. But they didn't know who I was. I was the woman who raised a son alone, the woman who paid for a house alone, the woman who survived everything. And I was going to show them that this wasn't over yet. I went to the office Sarah had recommended. It was downtown, on the 2nd floor of an old commercial building. The plaque on the door read, "Attorney Henry Miller." I rang the bell. A receptionist opened it. I explained that I needed to speak with the attorney. She asked me to sit and wait. 10 minutes later, a man in his 50s opened his office door. Gray hair, reading glasses, dress shirt with no tie. "You must be Mrs. Martha? Please come in." I walked in. The office was simple. Wooden desk, bookshelf full of law books, a fan in the corner. He offered me water. I accepted. "Tell me what happened." I told him everything. From the beginning. Robert's wedding, Jessica living there, the humiliations, the power of attorney, the coma, the eviction. I spoke without stopping. He took notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he remained silent for a moment. Then he asked, "Do you have proof?" I opened the binder. I showed the copy of the deed, the payment receipts, the receipts of the transfers I made to Jessica, the list of witnesses. I put everything on the table. He looked through them one by one, slowly, attentive. Sometimes he stopped, read again, wrote something down. After about 20 minutes, he took off his glasses and looked at me. "Mrs. Martha, you have a strong case here. Very strong. Can I get my house back?" "You can. And more than that." He opened a drawer and pulled out a form. "I'm going to need a few more things. But first, I need to go to the Recorder of Deeds office to verify something. If it is what I'm thinking, they didn't just take your house. They committed a felony." The next day, Attorney Miller called me. He asked me to come to the office again. When I arrived, he had a serious look on his face. "Mrs. Martha, I went to the recorder's office. I got a copy of the deed that is recorded now in your son's name. He put the paper in front of me. Look here, this signature. Is it yours? I looked. It was a signature with my name, but it wasn't my handwriting. It was similar. It tried to be, but it wasn't mine. No, I didn't sign this. I figured. They forged your signature, and they used a power of attorney you never granted. This isn't just civil fraud. It's criminal. Forgery, fraud, elder financial abuse. We can report them to the police. I felt my heart race. Can they go to jail? They can. But I'll be honest with you. A criminal process takes a long time. And sometimes, when it involves family, the district attorney doesn't go as hard. But in civil court, we win easily. We ask for the annulment of the fraudulent deed. We ask for restoration of possession. We ask for punitive damages. And we will win. How long does that take? With an emergency injunction, we can get you back in the house in 1 or 2 weeks. Tops. The deed is clearly forged. The judge will see this immediately. I took a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, I felt real hope. What do I need to do? He took a pen and started drawing a diagram on the paper. We are going to act on 3 fronts. First, legal. I file the lawsuit to annul the deed and restore possession today. I ask for an emergency order. With this evidence, the judge will grant it. Second front, social. We need the neighbors to write written statements of what they saw, especially the day they kicked you out. This strengthens the claim for moral damages. Third front, emotional. You will have to confront them. In front of the sheriff's deputy, the day we go there to take the house back. I can do that, I said, and I meant it. I know you can. I saw you walk in here with this organized binder with all the evidence sorted. You are already fighting. Now we're just going to finish the job. He spent the next few days preparing everything. I went back to the neighborhood and talked to the neighbors. Mrs. Higgins wrote 3 pages recounting everything she saw. Mr. Jacobs, too. Sarah, the contractor who built the fence. Even Jenny, the housekeeper who worked there, wrote saying Jessica always badmouthed me and that she saw how I was treated like a servant. I gathered everything and took it to Attorney Miller. He put together a complete file. He attached all the evidence, all the witnesses, and he filed the motion. 3 days later, he called me. Mrs. Martha, the judge granted the injunction. You have the right to return to your home immediately. I'm going to schedule with the sheriff's office for next week. Are you ready? I looked out the window of Mrs. Higgins' room. I saw the street. I saw the houses. I saw my house at the end of the street with the door closed. I'm ready. The week went by slowly. Every day seemed to have 48 hours. I woke up early, had coffee with Mrs. Higgins, and mentally organized what I was going to say, what I was going to do, how I was going to react when I saw Jessica's face again. Attorney Miller called me on Thursday. Mrs. Martha, it's set for Saturday morning, 10 o'clock. The deputy will be there. I will be there. You won't be alone. I know, I said. But even if I were, I would go. Friday night, I laid out my clothes. Nothing too fancy. Nothing that looked like I was trying to impress. Black slacks, white blouse, sensible shoes. Simple, dignified. I ironed the clothes carefully. I folded them and left them on the bedroom chair. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. The evidence, the witnesses, the forged deed. I knew I was right. I knew I was going to win. But still, my chest felt tight. At 5 in the morning, I got up. I took a shower. I got ready slowly. I pulled my hair back into a low bun. I looked in the mirror. I was thinner, more tired, but I was standing, and that was something. Mrs. Higgins knocked on the door. Martha, I made some strong coffee. Come eat something. I ate a piece of toast, drank the coffee. I didn't have much of an appetite, but I knew I needed energy. At 9:30, Attorney Miller came to pick me up. He was in a suit, briefcase in hand. He walked in, greeted Mrs. Higgins, and looked at me. Shall we? I grabbed my cane. I grabbed the binder with my copies. I took a deep breath. Let's go. In the car, he explained how it was going to go down. The officer knocks on the door, identifies everyone, explains the court order. They will have to leave immediately. If they refuse, he arrests them. You don't need to say anything if you don't want to. Just be present. I'm going to speak, I said. I need to speak. He looked at me and nodded. Then speak, but calmly, without fighting. Justice is already on your side. You don't need to prove anything else. When we turned onto my street, I felt my stomach churn. It was Saturday morning. There were people washing their cars, kids playing on the sidewalk, everything normal. But for me, nothing was normal. The sheriff's cruiser was already parked in front of the house. He was a tall man in uniform with a clipboard in his hand. He shook hands with Attorney Miller. Then he greeted me. "You must be Mrs. Martha?" "I am." "Rest assured, ma'am. I'll handle this quickly." We crossed the street. I walked slowly, because of the leg, but I walked firmly. Mrs. Higgins had come out onto her sidewalk. Mr. Jacobs, too. Sarah was at her window, everyone watching. We stopped in front of the gate. That gate I had painted 3 times, that I fixed when it rusted, that I opened and closed 1,000 times. The officer rang the doorbell. No one answered. He rang again. This time, he held the button down longer. The living room curtain moved. Someone was watching. The officer rang a 3rd time and shouted, "Sheriff's Department, open the door." I heard footsteps. The door opened, and there she was, Jessica, in a bathrobe, hair down, looking like someone who had just woken up. She looked at the officer. She looked at Attorney Miller. And when she saw me, her face changed. She went white as a sheet. "What do you want?" The officer opened his clipboard. He pulled out a document. "Writ of possession and eviction order. The house belongs to Mrs. Martha. The deed in Robert's name has been annulled due to forgery. You have until the end of the day to vacate the premises." That was the moment I took a step forward, and I looked her in the eyes. "Jessica," I said, with a steady voice. "I'm back." She took a step back, scared. "You can't come in here. This house belongs to Robert." The sheriff's deputy held up the paper. "Ma'am, you didn't understand. The house is Mrs. Martha's. It always was. The deed you filed was done with a forged signature. It's fraud." "That's a lie!" she screamed. "She signed everything. She was confused, sick, but she signed." Attorney Miller opened his briefcase. He pulled out 2 sheets. "Here is Mrs. Martha's real signature on previous documents, and here is the signature on the alleged power of attorney you used. Look closely. Even the slant isn't the same. Any handwriting expert sees this in 5 minutes." Jessica fell silent, but only for a second. Robert, get down here." Footsteps on the stairs, and he appeared, in shorts, t-shirt, barefoot. When he saw me, he froze in the middle of the living room. "Mom." "Hello, Robert," I said, and my voice didn't tremble. He looked at the officer, the lawyer, Jessica. "What's going on?" "What's going on is that your lie is over," I spoke with authority. "I have the original deed. I have all the payment receipts. I have witnesses. And I have proof that you forged my signature." "Mom, it wasn't like that." "Then how was it?" I took a step toward him. "You saw me in a coma, unable to speak, unable to defend myself, and you thought it was the perfect time to take everything from me, everything I built alone." He lowered his head. He couldn't meet my eyes. Jessica, however, didn't lower anything. She crossed her arms and lifted her chin arrogantly. "We just did the right thing. You were old, sick. You couldn't take care of anything. We took responsibility." "Responsibility?" I almost laughed. "You treated me like a maid in my own house. You made me eat alone in the kitchen. You threw away the gift I made for my granddaughter. You took my pension for 2 years. And in the end, you kicked me out in front of everyone. You're exaggerating." "Am I exaggerating?" I opened my binder. I pulled out a sheet. "Here, statement from Mrs. Higgins. She saw you humiliate me in the street, calling me old. Here, statement from Mr. Jacobs. He saw you take my money and spend it on clothes and nonsense while I didn't even have decent shampoo. Here, statement from Jenny, who worked inside here. She saw how you ordered me to clean your room, wash your clothes, as if I were your servant." I put the papers in the officer's hand. He looked at them, passed them to Attorney Miller. Jessica opened her mouth, but no sound came out. For the first time, she had no answer. I looked at Robert. "You saw all of this, and you did nothing. I raised you alone. I worked 12 hours a day so you would have food, clothes, school. I sold my sewing machine to pay for your tuition. I paid for this house alone, without anyone's help. And you betrayed me." He lifted his face. There were tears in his eyes. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't want it to be like this. But it was. And you let it happen." Attorney Miller took a step forward. "Robert, just so you know, forgery of a legal document carries jail time. So does fraud. We have everything documented. Mrs. Martha hasn't decided yet if she will press criminal charges, but she can." Robert went pale. "Criminal charges? It's a felony, Robert. It's not just a family matter, it's a real crime." Jessica pulled his arm. "Don't listen to them. They're trying to scare us. We'll talk to a lawyer." "You can talk," Attorney Miller said, calm. "Any lawyer you find will tell you the same thing. You have no defense. The signature is fake. The deed is fraudulent. You will lose, and you will have to pay legal fees, plus punitive damages to Mrs. Martha. At least $50,000. $50,000? Jessica almost choked. "Exactly. For pain and suffering, public humiliation, eviction of an elderly person from their own home, elder financial abuse. The judge will have no mercy." She stood there staring in disbelief. For the first time since I met that woman, she didn't have control of the situation. The officer tapped his clipboard. "Look, let's resolve this quickly. You have until 6 p.m. today to leave. You can take your personal items, but the house stays with Mrs. Martha. If at 6 p.m. you are still here, I come back and remove you by force. Understood?" "This is absurd," Jessica screamed. "We don't even have anywhere to go." "You should have thought of that before," I said. And my voice came out cold, firm as steel. "I was left without a home when you kicked me out. And I was coming out of a coma. You are healthy. Figure it out." Robert took a step in my direction. "Mom, please, let us stay a few days, just until we find a place." I stared at him. That boy I carried in my arms, that I rocked to sleep, that I protected from every danger, and who stabbed me in the back. "No." He flinched at the word. "Mom, you are not my son anymore. A son doesn't do this to his mother. You are a stranger. And strangers don't live in my house." Heavy silence. Even the officer stopped shuffling papers. Jessica grabbed Robert's arm tightly. "Come on. We're not going to beg her. Let's grab our things and get out of this old shack. I never liked living here anyway." She stomped up the stairs. Robert stood still, looking at me. He opened his mouth as if he were going to say something, but he didn't. He just turned around and went up after her. I stood there, standing in the living room. In my living room. I looked around. Everything was different. New furniture, new TV, paintings I had never seen. They had changed everything, as if I had never existed there, but I had existed, and I was back. The officer handed me a copy of the order. "Mrs. Martha, you can enter. The house is yours. If they cause trouble, call the station, or call me directly." "Thank you," I said. Attorney Miller put his hand on my shoulder. "Congratulations. You did it." I looked at him. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. "We did it." He shook my hand and walked out. The officer left too. I stood there, alone, in the middle of the living room. I heard noise upstairs, them opening drawers, throwing clothes into suitcases. Jessica screaming something, Robert trying to calm her down. I didn't care. I had time. I had the rest of my life. I walked to the kitchen. I threw the window wide open. The sun came in, clear and warm. I looked at the backyard. The plants I had tended with such love were dry, but they could be saved. I heard footsteps coming down the stairs, voices at the door, the gate slamming shut, the car starting, the sound of the engine fading away. Silence. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in months, I breathed in peace. The house was mine again. My life was mine again, and I didn't owe anything to anyone. The first few days, I stayed alone in the house. I cleaned everything thoroughly. I took out the new furniture they had bought and put it in the backyard. I called a thrift store to come pick it up. I didn't want anything that bore their mark there. I brought back my things. Mrs. Higgins had kept some of my objects that I left with her years ago. My mother's painting, the crocheted tablecloth I made when I got married, the old sewing machine I never had the courage to throw away. I put everything back in its place. The house was starting to feel like me again. Slowly, but it was coming back. Attorney Miller called me a week later. Mrs. Martha, they filed an appeal, but it's weak. They have no argument. The lawsuit for damages is moving forward. And there's one more thing. Jessica is being investigated for embezzlement because of your pension money she controlled. Investigated? Yes. The district attorney took an interest in the case. She could face criminal charges, Robert too as an accomplice. I don't know if it will end in jail time, but they will have a criminal record and a heavy fine. I remained silent for a while. I thought about Robert, about the boy he was, about the man he had become. Attorney, I don't want my son to go to jail. Mrs. Martha, I know what he did, but I don't want that. I want my house. I want the money she took from me back, but I don't want to see my son behind bars. Attorney Miller sighed. I understand. We can ask the DA to consider a plea deal. Restitution of the full amount, plus the moral damages, plus community service. No jail time, but they will have a record, and they will have to admit to the fraud. You can do that. I'll try. 2 weeks later, the lawyer called me again. They accepted the deal. They are going to pay back everything, $52,000 in 24 installments, and they will do community service for a year. Jessica at a nursing home. Robert at a nonprofit that helps single mothers. Ironic, isn't it? I almost laughed. Yeah, it's ironic. And there's more. They asked to speak with you. In person. I took a deep breath. Okay, you can set it up. The meeting was at Attorney Miller's office. I arrived first. I sat and waited. When they walked in, I barely recognized Robert. He was thinner, deep circles under his eyes, unshaven. Jessica looked different too. No makeup, plain clothes. She didn't look at me. The lawyer explained the terms of the agreement. They signed everything. When he finished, he left the room, leaving us alone. Robert was the first to speak. Mom, I'm so sorry. Truly. I don't know what happened to me. Jessica was in my ear all the time, saying we deserved that house, that you didn't need all that space, that it was fair. And I believed her. Or I wanted to believe her. I have no excuse. I looked at him. In his eyes, I saw the boy in there. But I also saw the man who had betrayed me. Robert, you kicked me out of my house while I was recovering from a stroke. You saw how she humiliated me for years, and you did nothing. I know. You knew it was wrong, and you chose to let it happen. He lowered his head. I know. I sighed. I forgive you, because you are my son, and because I don't want to carry hate inside me. But forgiving is not forgetting, and it is not going back to how it was before. I understand, he said, his voice cracking. You will pay what you owe. You will honor the agreement, and after that, if you want to rebuild something with me, it will have to be little by little, with respect, with boundaries. I won't be the mother who accepts everything anymore. I am not that person anymore. I know, Mom, and I accept it. I looked at Jessica. She remained silent. You're not going to say anything? She looked up. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I don't want anything from you. I just want you to stay away from me, and away from my family. She didn't answer. She just stood up and walked out of the room. Robert stayed a little longer. Mom, we separated. I moved out. I'm living in a small apartment, alone. Bella stays with her. You can bring Bella to visit me, if you want. I'm her grandmother, and she is not to blame for anything. His eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Mom. He walked out. I sat there, feeling a huge weight lift off my chest. It wasn't complete relief. It wasn't pure happiness, but it was peace, and that was enough. Months went by. I started sewing again. Nothing big, just some alterations, some hems, for neighbors and acquaintances. More for distraction than for money. Social Security covered the bills. And the settlement money, when it started coming in, I saved it. For emergencies. For my security. Robert started visiting me. Once a month. Always calling ahead. Always respectful. He brought Bella. I baked a cake. We had coffee. We talked. It wasn't like before, but it was something. And something was better than nothing. The house was mine again. Truly. Not just on paper. In spirit. I woke up in the morning, opened the kitchen window, made coffee, and felt that this place belonged to me. No one was going to take it from me again. Mrs. Higgins became my closest friend. We had coffee together every week. She helped me plant the garden again. We put in tomatoes, lettuce, basil. It turned out beautiful. There was one afternoon when I was sitting in the backyard drinking juice, watching the plants grow, and I thought about everything that had happened. The pain, the humiliation, the fight, the victory, and I understood one thing. Life can take a lot from us. It can take our health. It can take the people we love. It can even try to take our dignity. But if we don't let it, if we fight, no one can take the respect we have for ourselves. I could have given up. I could have stayed in that guest room at Mrs. Higgins feeling defeated, waiting for life to end. But I didn't. I got up. I gathered the evidence. I sought help. And I fought for what was mine. And today, I am here, in my home, living my life, my way, with dignity, with peace. If you are going through an injustice right now, if someone is humiliating you, disrespecting you, taking what is yours, don't give up. Gather the evidence, seek help, fight, because you deserve respect, you deserve dignity, no matter how old you are. And if this story touched you in any way, comment down below which city you are watching from. I want to know that this message reached you, and stay with me for the next videos that will appear on the screen. Someone might need to hear this today.